Hey guys, I'm Brandon Woolum, and today we are checking in with our friend Evan Kraft. How are you, man?
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got a lot to promote right now, but we're going to start with this book, The Extra Mile, An Extraordinary Cycling Journey to Find Faith and Purpose. Going to be out in just a little bit, September 23rd. So, I mean, over these past, 12, 13 years now, we've kind of got to know you as the bilingual music singer and worship leader, but now we get this book. So, tell us how this came about.
Yeah, well, this has been crazy. I mean, it's the first time I've written a book, and I've done Spanish music for the majority of my career, and then ended up doing bilingual music. I went on this bike ride in 2018, and so it's been a long time coming. We have a documentary that's also coming out on the 23rd, and so I'm super excited about that, called The Extra Mile. But this was like the culmination of years of work and seeing God move so rapidly in my life. And then I did the biggest concert of my life, 80,000 people in Bogota, Colombia, at an event called Bogota Gospel. And I was asking God, what's next? And so that's how I ended up reaching out to a friend who had cycled across the US. And I said, hey, I think that we could partner up and do something incredible in South America and help people. And that was the first little inkling of, or the birth of what Ciclo Vida and this book is all about. But it's much, much more than that.
Yeah, I saw somewhere like you kind of felt empty, even though you were at this point of your career that most people can look at. You've got millions and millions of followers looking at your life every day. They see the good, but apparently behind the scenes, you felt a little empty there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can look at any artist. I've
Hmm.
seen a lot of people that are very successful in, what we would categorize that as, and you realize that getting to the top doesn't always mean that then you're happy. I mean, I listened to podcasts, and it was Tony Robbins was saying, that like a lot of times people are happy for like 6 minutes, 6 days, 6 weeks. It doesn't last that long. And so finding something that really fulfills you, I think that is what is worth chasing. And I found that in serving others. And that's a big part of this book was that we invited two Venezuelan Paralympic athletes to ride along with us. And they didn't know us at all, and we didn't know them. And so we had all of our preconceived notions. I saw on Instagram that they had prosthetic legs, and then they show up in Chile and they don't have prosthetic legs. I didn't
Oh, wow.
understand the challenges that they would be facing. They were incredible athletes. I mean, for them to like be beating me with one leg up mountains. I mean, it was extraordinary. But what we ended up really being able to invest in them and really be able to see God work in their lives because they were not believers when they showed up. And so it was this crazy thing of we decided, it was six cyclists, six of my friends came. We had a team of over 18 people when it was all said and done between musicians, logistics, and cyclists. And, for them to come and see, Venezuela was going through one of the roughest moments in its history of, 1,000% inflation, sometimes monthly. It was unlivable. And for them to come and be around us and like have access to food, have access to medicine, have access to everything that we would consider normal was was such an eye-opening experience for them. And to say, why are you doing this? And so that is where, the extra mile is biblical, but it's, it's the status, you can go the status quo, but where you really meet, where I've met God were the moments where I go, God, take me beyond my comfort zone, take me beyond what is normally asked of me, and show me, take me to a place where I have to have faith, I have to trust you. And so that's exactly what this was all about.
Yeah, coast to coast cycling, that's no small task. Where did this rank with your cycling journeys before this? Like how far was the furthest
Oh, there
before
were
you did
no
this?
cycling journeys before this. I had trained for it, but I bought a bike for this.
Wow.
And so I remember, like, even in the book, I talk about it. The first ride that I did, like, I was living in Texas and I was going on these like mile loops, and I would do like 11 or 12 of them. And I was like, it was so hot and I was so out of shape. And then I go to California with one of my best friends, and he's cycling out there all the time. And the first ride we did was 13 miles and it had a hill. And I was like, I can't do this. I'm like ready to throw up. I'm ready to throw in the towel. And, but what you find is that, with any type of exercise, the first 2 weeks are really hard. Like, if you give your body a chance to adjust, then you can do a lot more than you imagine. And I think that has a lot to do with, like us as well, like our own discipline. Like I remember when I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. I studied abroad. And when I got to Costa Rica the first day, I felt like it was such a big mistake that what am I doing here? Well, like I don't know anybody here. I don't even know why I'm learning Spanish. And it was, a few days in that I'm like, oh, I actually can do this. And so a lot of times we can give up because we think, oh, things are too hard. But if we stick with it, we'll find that there's actually a lot of blessing in being disciplined and trying to go the extra mile.
Yeah, take us into the typical day once you got out there on the journey, both physically and spiritually, how all that was affecting you out there on the road.
I mean, it was crazy. Part of the book that I talked about is that I read a book by Reinhard Bonnke, Living a Life of Fire, before I started going into Latin America. And one thing that he talks about is like going up to these boats that are in the water at like a dock and pushing them. Things that are like, 50 tons or whatever. And you're able to move them because they're in the water. And so, I mean, we would cycle, we'd wake up early, we'd cycle for hours, we'd eat a bunch, and then like, it wasn't that exciting at that point. But what was really exciting is that I had always wanted to see like a miracle. And Reinhard Bonnke has stories of like people growing limbs and tumors falling off and all this stuff that I've never seen. And I go, okay, God, well, like, am I crazy? Do I not have enough faith? Like, what's going on here? And so I don't want to give away too much of this book, but when we invited Alex and Alice showed us up without a prosthetic. And by the end of the book, it was not a regenerative leg, that reappeared. But by the end of it, we were able to get prosthetic legs for her and for Alex,
Wow.
through extraordinarily miraculous provision. And so even though, we could pray all day, and sometimes we want to pin God into this box of he's got to work within these parameters. But being a believer is, sometimes God's going to ask you to pray and sometimes he's going to ask you to give. And so we were able to give of our energy, of our resources, of our influence, of our talents, and we were able to raise money and buy these prosthetic legs for two people that had no hope. They had no future. I mean, they're married today. They couldn't hold hands while they walked because she was using crutches, and so there's such like I never want to discount the transformation. It's very like appealing to people to be like, "Oh, there was a physical healing, but there was a healing, a spiritual healing through this journey for them." And that is what most affected me, was to be a part of it and to be like for God to allow me to be a catalyst in the lives of two people. And so I think that, sometimes we want the gospel to reach the ends of the world, but if you want people to understand the radical love of Jesus, you have to be pretty radical.
Mhm.
Like there was no reason I needed to go cycle across South America. It was one of my biggest markets. I could have just booked a tour, gone on a bus, there were, gotten my money, gone home, invested it, we're done. Right? Bigger music videos, everything. But I said, God, you've given me this. You've given me these incredible experiences. How do I give back? And how do I call attention to people that, they're bombarded on social media with music and videos and come to the next concert, but how do I incorporate something that is real? And so many people in Latin America, so many people here in the US, they may not have like lost their leg, but they've lost hope. They've lost focus. They've lost direction. And so to see some people that have really, really, they've faced incredible difficulties in their life, overcome those and have hope in Jesus, I think I mean, that is the reason I wrote this book. was not so that you can hear more about my cycling journey, my mediocre athleticism. It's about seeing people's lives transformed.
How long ago in real time was this journey over there?
It
Like,
was 7 years ago.
wow. So how was your cycling journey today?
I am a dad, so I have two little girls, and I was talking to one of my friends today, and he was like, we have kids, we cannot be that reckless riding next to 18 wheelers on the highway. I mean, the police would tell us we couldn't do it all the time, and we would just keep going, keep going, keep going. So, I mean, it's something that I loved it. I live in Tennessee, and unfortunately, where I live, there are no bike lanes. So it is not a safe hobby to have. But I run. I would love to do an Ironman one day, but it's not going to be living where I'm at.
Go somewhere a little flatter.
Well, it's not. I actually really enjoy cycling up mountains. So when I was training, I was living in Medellin, Colombia, and it's a valley at 5,000 feet and it goes straight up to 8,000, and sometimes even higher. So I would cycle, it'd be an hour and a half going straight uphill and you're going really slow. And then you go back down and it takes you 10 minutes. It was, and it was so scary because you're going so fast and you're like one small
Yeah.
mistake and you're roadkill. But I mean, I was 27 and single, so there was nothing better.
You kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. You didn't have a Hispanic background, but the Latin music community has just embraced you wholeheartedly over this last decade plus. How is that humility and authenticity and God's calling, all of that played in breaking these cultural barriers between those two communities?
I think when you go into another culture, I mean, I started out thinking I was very arrogant and very prideful. Like, um, I thought like, oh, I'm from Los Angeles. I'm going to teach you how to worship. And it was such a gift from God that he slapped me in the face in such a loving way the first day I ever went to Mexico, where I realized like I don't have the language skills. I didn't have the music skills. Nothing worked. I had maybe the music skills, but the sound system didn't work. And it was like everything that I relied on was stripped away. And so I heard or I understood God in that moment of like nothing is going to happen in your life unless you learn to love my people. And to love them is to serve them. Is not to say, "Hey, let me teach you. Let me impose on you what I think is correct. Let me serve you." And so it was an incredible journey of learning a language, but learning a language is like dating someone. It's like, I want to learn more about you. I want to learn like what are the reasons that Mexican culture has an incredible history. It has an awful history as well.
Mm.
Like there was a lot of oppression by Europeans, and that has had an influence on Mexico. There's been a lot of corruption. And so why, when a believer in Mexico has to trust in God for different things, when you live in, my wife was a missionary in Mazatlan, which is in Sinaloa, and I mean the Culiacan, the capital, it's a war zone and she has best friends that are there and I have friends that have a church there, and so it's very different than going to church in Franklin, Tennessee. It's very different than growing up in Thousand Oaks, California. It is saying, okay, God, like I'm going out today, I'm going to need to trust you. And that was same in Medellin. A lot of my friends grew up in the era of Pablo Escobar, where they would go to parks and then a statue would blow up. And so learning the history and learning to not just be fascinated with it because, oh my gosh, it's narcos, but learning like, okay, there's so much more to the people of Colombia than this. There's so much more to the Argentinians. There's so much, and God is doing something incredible there. That's where I think all of the blessing started was with curiosity and humility to say, God, I want to know more about what you're doing here.
Yeah, and if CCM fans are watching this from different parts of the country, they may not know how big Latin Christian music is, but it is massive. So maybe look up just some of these Latin artists that are out there filling arenas, and this is a very engaged crowd too. Latin Christian fans definitely listen to the music. They watch the live videos. They'll watch this interview, I'm sure. So if you haven't checked out Latin Christian music, do that. I myself do a lot of research this time of year on the Latin music scene because of Dove Awards and stuff, and I get to talk to all these Latin artists now, and it's amazing getting to see what's going on around the world in those different languages.
Yeah, and
And
I think what's really cool about it too is that, you think there's 17 Spanish speaking countries, but like they don't look like me. And
mm,
so, when I was growing up, I heard a lot about the 1040 window and a lot about missions, and that was the focus of our church. And I remember thinking, there is no way that somebody in Afghanistan is going to listen to me. There's probably a very, very low chance that I will have an influence in Iran. And what's crazy is that Colombians and other Latinos have been able to go and do effective missions in countries, in Muslim countries, where I would not be able to go as an American, as a white American. And so that's where the CCM market, or like, there's 400 million Spanish speakers last time I did my research. There might be more. And that is 400 million people that God loves, 400 million people that he died on the cross for, that he wants to see blessed and prosper, and he loves them with the same love that he loves me and you. And so it's really cool to to witness what God is doing in a different culture, a different language, a different part of the world, where a lot of people only get to go on vacation. And then to actually be able to sit and eat with people, it changes your whole perspective.
yeah, and the industry is kind of evolving too these past few years. All the major songwriters are putting their songs out in multiple languages now, where 10 years ago we might have only got it in English. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been a part of that a little bit since you've been around breaking these barriers for now a decade plus. So
Yeah, I translated the first two albums of Elevation in Spanish. I've worked with a lot of other artists. I don't do it a lot anymore, but I have one of my really good friends. He does a lot of the translations, and he's a lot better than me.
yeah, speaking of the languages, this book going to be available in both languages, so English and Spanish speaking community is going to be able to read this.
Got it right here, English and Spanish.
Yeah, and it's September 23rd, right? Is when we get all of this.
Yeah, and we also have it in audiobook, recorded by me, and so you can hear me read the entire book in English and the entire book in Spanish.
Yeah, let's talk about the documentary a little bit. What can we expect from that? It's just literally you filmed this entire journey.
Yeah, so I mean, we didn't know what we were doing, so we hired a few videographers to come with us, and the editing process has taken took a lot longer than we imagined. Writing a book and doing a documentary is very different than recording an album. The skill set is very different, and it takes a bigger team in order to do a film. And so we are really excited. I mean, it shows you, it's one thing to hear about it, it's one thing to read it, it's another thing to see it. And so I mean, there's very different things in the documentary than from the book, and so I really think it's valuable to do both. But the documentary it's a tool that I get to use at events. People can watch it online, they can see it on it's going to be on Caleb's website, and it's really cool because it all like I have QR codes with like little videos and stuff from in the book that you can see some of the amazing, miraculous things. Like it is like I'm telling you, you can't watch without crying. And so there were, people that cannot walk running by the end of this bike ride. And so it is it's that story, and it's visual, and you get to hear the backstories of my backstories, my family, my friends that are on the bike ride. And so it's really cool. I really hope that it gives a different insight of who I am and what God has done in my life. And so I hope it inspires young people to take steps of faith and go the extra mile.
Yeah, we can see that and get the book on September 23rd. And right before you got into this promo cycle, we've got some new music from you too. So let's hit on the new album a little bit before we go too.
Yeah, come on. Well, my new album came out August 15th, and my daughter was born a few days later.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's been quite the month. But Que Cante La Iglesia just came out, and it means "Let the Church Sing." And it's been a project that I've actually been working on for years. And I was cracking up that Torrin Wells released a project called the same thing like a month before me in English. And so, but Que Cante La Iglesia it's been recorded in Peru, in Costa Rica, in Guatemala, in Houston, in Nashville at the Blanco. And so it's different songs in Spanish. Some of them, you'd probably know like Praise and The Joy, but other original songs that we recorded in Houston and Guatemala. And so it's really awesome I mean, the goal of it was to, when we recorded in Peru, we were up in the mountains of Cotahuasi. So you got to fly to Lima, you got to fly to Cusco, then you got to drive into the mountains like 3 or 4 hours. Like no one has ever recorded anything there. And it is a lot of people who are natively Quechua. So they speak a different language, not Spanish, and they know this song, and I got to record it with them. And so I was inspired because I went to Ecuador to a little town and called Otavalo, and I was singing 10,000 Reasons in Spanish that I had translated from English, and they had taken my translation and translated it into Quechua.
Wow.
So it is really crazy to see how God is using that, and it just continues to move and go and just be alive. And so, I wanted to capture that a little bit, and I'm hoping to do a lot more, and hopefully do some in Quechua and other, indigenous languages that like with people, so that we could really capture the voice of the church in Latin America.
Yeah, that's awesome. The album is out there streaming now everywhere if you want to give it a listen, and then go ahead and be ready for the book. It'll be out there. The book and the documentary, September 23rd, The Extra Mile from Evan Kraft will be out there. Good hanging with you today, man.
Yeah, come on. Thank you so much.